Last weekend we did a YouTube live video, and I appreciate all of you that patiently cooperated with how that process worked. It kind of fell apart in the middle, and I resumed, and learning experience, what can I say? I also did a poll on Twitter asking what the next video should be, and you guys picked how I set up the 60-gallon frag system. So that's what this video is going to be about. Now I want to say that, this channel's been growing for the last year and a half because I really started putting a lot of effort into providing content, and I get messages from you on a regular basis. I got a really cool message from a guy named Jeremy on Facebook the other day, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to include it in this video. Been watching a ton of Mark Levinson's videos lately, and it's just rekindled my passion. Oh, thanks, Jeremy. That means the world to me when I know these videos are actually touching you and getting you right back into the saltwater hobby. That's the whole reason for this channel. So thank you all for tuning in and following along and commenting. I appreciate it. So this is where the frag tank is going to go, on top of the stand that I made out of red oak that's been painted with an oil-based black paint that's shiny, so that way it won't rot. And all the exposed ends were given multiple coats to really seal it against moisture. This pink foam will go underneath the frag tank itself. It's 3/4 inch pink foam from Home Depot, the Pink Panther stuff. I painted the edges black, so that way when the tank is in place, it kind of is invisible. And I oversized the holes in that end for the bulkhead itself, so that way it fits down inside, because the size of the nut is going to be larger than the pipe coming up. This is a 1-inch bulkhead, but the nut is around 2 1/4, I believe. I might be off a little bit on that. But it has to fit inside the foam when the tank sits in place. This is the Model F Sump from my website, the kind I build for many customers for many years. And this one is designed with the skimmer section on one side, the refugium on the opposite side, and the return zone in the center. Water would drain into both bulkheads at the exact same time. 75% of the water would go into the skimmer zone, and it would drain down into this bubble tower and exit out the base into the skimmer zone for the protein skimmer to help filter the water. The other 25% will exit into the refugium zone, or drain into the refugium zone, and this is raw tank water, which feeds the plants, the macroalgae, pods, whatever it is you're trying to keep alive in that section is getting raw water, like I said, from the reef. That water then flows gently through the teeth and into the return zone. A return pump would sit here. The heater would sit in here, possibly a small reactor. There's a probe holder here to hold the 3 probes from the apex, which would be temperature, ORP, and pH. There's also a bracket here for an auto top-off switch if you wanted to employ one of those. So I decided to make one for this system, so that way I would have really good filtration on the frag tank. Additionally, a new item that I've added to the end of this system is going to be the top-off container. And this is just about 6 inches wide and 20 inches tall, and it will use a float valve to refill it from my RODI system. The water will flow across some tubing down this wall and go into this float valve, and when it's full, it shuts off the RO system. And even if it didn't turn it off completely, my floor stays dry. There's an access door if I have to work on the float switch at some point in the future. And then I'll be using the Smart ATO top-off system to add water to my sump as it evaporates on an hourly and daily basis. And finally, I'm going to use a triple dosing system to maintain alkalinity, calcium, and magnesium on this system, and I will not be using a calcium reactor, which is what I've been using for many years. So I'll have to use dosing pumps and mix my own solution. The lid comes off for refills. I can put alkalinity, calcium, magnesium into 3 zones. The liquid will come through small tubing and go into the dosing pumps and then trickle into the sump, or I might even just run the tubing straight up to trickle into the display tank itself, the frag tank. So this is what's going to run the 60-gallon frag tank. And here's the frag tank. Yay! It's finally on the stand. Looks pretty good. That's the return pump I'll be using, the Ecotech Vectra M1, which I think stands for medium 1. And over here is the overflow box. And I made a lid for this one where I can keep it completely in shade so that no light is hitting it. And then there'll be a couple of Durso standpipes in here for the drain system to the filtration beneath. I will probably end up putting some vinyl right here or some limo tint to hide it completely so I don't have to see it. But for now, I'm going to leave that exposed in case I need to film anything to show you how it all works. Very clean setup. I'm very proud of this. I guess it needs a Milo's Reef sticker on here somewhere. I made it tall on purpose. It's kind of funny. My anemone tank is a 60-gallon, and it's way smaller by comparison. It's 24, 24, 24, and this guy is 60 stretched out. And the reason I made it so tall is when you have frags and you try and take a picture of them, a lot of times the water is so shallow you can't penetrate the water and get a good shot, at least not with my camera. So I figured if I made it deeper and I wanted to take pictures of some frags, they'd be down here, the photo box is up here, and I can get that focus that I was hoping for. Lights will be hanging above. At this point I planned on a Radeon. Using the one from the 60 gallon will go on top of here. And then I'll be doing some other lights that I'm testing for vendors. So when I do that, I'll be putting on this tank to test how they work, measure par, see how well they spread. It's just a good test tank. It's a good setup system. I really like the look of using the entire area underneath the aquarium for all of your equipment and to have space for everything to fit nicely and have room to work. So you can see down at the bottom, I've got all the filtration in place. I might pull it out to fix that little spot down there where there's some paint on the wall so it's clean looking. And then I've got to get all the equipment installed, get the plumbing hooked up, get the wiring all over there. It's going to be controlled to the apex. I'm going to be using an expansion module, a PM2, to be able to track everything that the main reef is on. It'll also track the 60 gallon, even though it's a standalone separate system. It's a pretty nice clean setup, and it still gives me room to walk through the fish room and not feel crowded. And here is a view from the end. So you can see there's plenty of room in here. It's actually time to repaint the floor too. It's looking horrible. I built my sump 16 inches tall to leave at least 12 inches of room above them to get the skimmer in and out of the sump. All right, the tank is nearly ready to go. The return plumbing still has to be connected, which is right up there in the top corner. And that line will go down and feed into the return pump that's going to sit right inside that middle zone of the sump. Let's take a look at the other side. So I have two Durso drains. They're under a lid, so that way no algae grows in here. You can see, side by side. Awesome. And I'll probably cover this with some black vinyl. Underneath, there's two drains. One drain in the very back goes straight across and down into the skimmer section, into the bubble tower that's filled with some rock rubble. That incidentally is Marco rock rubble I had left over from a long time ago sitting in a bucket, so it's very practical right now. The second drain line is the one in the front, right here, and it will just go straight down into the refugium zone. But as I close this valve right here to about 25%, or I'm sorry, 50%, that will force some of the water to not drain down, and instead it will go across and join the other drain line and go into the bubble tower. And the reason I do this is I like 75% of my water to go over here and 25% to go to the refugium. This is my top-off container, and this will be the triple dosing container. And then my Vectra pump is going to go right in here. And it uses 3/4 inch plumbing. So that's the next step, is to get the plumbing installed. Let me take just a moment to discuss the importance of a level tank. Having that bubble dead center in your level is key. And you want to make sure that your tank is level on the front and in the back. And you also want to check the level front to back. It's important to use a full-size level that spans the distance of the tank. If you need a longer one, get a longer one. For shorter areas, you can use a shorter one, but don't use a tiny one for the whole tank. Now, what I did to get this tank level on my uneven concrete, first I did my best to make the stand correct. However, the concrete was a different height, so because I poured it myself. What I did in this case is I put in some acrylic shims under the legs to get the height I wanted. So you can see right there is two pieces of black acrylic. It's a 3/8 piece and a 1/4 inch piece, and the wood sitting on top. This one here kind of does nothing, but it looks better to be there. And then there's one back here. That one is 3/8 plus an 1/8 inch piece of acrylic, and you can see it's another color because I used clear for the 1/8 inch. But getting these legs off the floor is another good thing because it avoids any kind of water damage if there were to be some kind of flooding in this room. I'm pretty excited. I'm at the final stages now to where I can go ahead and get water in it, sand. I'm going to put some rock in there. I have all this stuff right here that I'm going to be using, and it's going to go in here. All right, so let me talk about the sand. I like sand in a tank. I always have. Always have friends tell me, why are you putting sand in a frag tank? You want lots of flow. You don't want any sand. Well, I want to look at it. I want it to be pretty. So I did get this sand. It was actually sent to me as a sampler pack to try out the different grades, and I used it all. And I like it. The company that sent it to me doesn't even sell the sand anymore, so there's no point going into all that. But that's because I didn't use it as fast as they sent it to me. It sat here for quite a while this project was pending on my to-do list for like a year. The sand wasn't rinsed. I just added it. It did come with a small pack of live sand as well, which I ended up using once there was water in the tank. At this point, you have a very basic setup. You have a tank on top of equipment. You've got a return pump. It's ready for the water. Now, when you add water to a tank, if you just pour it in, you'll create a huge dust storm. So instead, I like to put the tubing into something. In this case, I had a rock with a big hole in it, so I could pump the water in gradually and kind of sneak it in and not create a storm. Did it matter? No, but I like to look in the tank, like I mentioned before. So a little bit of this stuff will come up, but then once the skimmer is turned on in the sump, it'll pull it right back out. You can see it's not even that bad. It's just a small cloud. I opted to put a finer grade sand in the refugium zone, and I usually recommend just about an inch. You just need a little bit down there for the bugs to dwell within. The plants aren't going to attach to it. And I hooked up the apex, and it already started measuring stuff for me. It's cycling time! And for me, that means getting a big old jumbo shrimp at the deli at the supermarket, 90 cents. Open it up, put it in the tank. That's all the work you gotta do. Put the whole shrimp in there. If you end up getting a shrimp that doesn't have a head, so be it. But you're not just trying to put in some cocktail shrimp. If you're setting up a bigger tank, you may need 2 or 3 of these. A smaller tank, 1 will suffice. We're just trying to get the ammonia cycle started, and instead of using live fish to cycle a tank, which is frowned upon. This was mid-January, and we are doing the cycling process. No filtration is needed, no carbon is needed, no lighting is needed. The shrimp has been in the tank now for about 2 days, and it hasn't even really done any kind of decay. It's just sitting in there rotting. And I know it's rotting because the water has gotten a little cloudy, and there's this really hideous looking scum that's down in the sump. The skimmer is turned off during this period because I want the decay to occur to create some ammonia for the cycle. But way down in there, I don't know if you can make it out. I'll have to adjust the lighting. All right, that's better. You can see the bubbly stuff on the surface. It's obviously there are some air bubbles, but that's not normal air bubbles. This stuff is more like a clear slime, which is bacterial in nature. And I cannot wait to take the shrimp out of the tank and get the skimmer going and get the surface agitated and back to normal. But that's just kind of a preview to see what's going on. It's just kind of gross. And then later on, I'll be adding some macroalgae into the refugium zone with a light above it to help avoid any type of algae in the display tank itself. There's that boring shrimp. It's done nothing but flip over once due to the flow in the water. 3 days in, I decided to test and see if the ammonia had begun to rise, which it had. The shrimp itself didn't really cocoon into a white, disgusting blob like I expected, but that's fine. It doesn't matter. But I did see this result inside the sump. Look how the bubble tower overflowed with this crazy mass of foam. You may or may not see such a result in your sump, but it doesn't need to be like that. I'm just showing you what happened with me. I continued to do my water testing. I watched for water quality. I looked for the bacteria on the surface of the water, and that's how I was able to determine when it was time to remove the shrimp. But my basic rule of thumb is take the shrimp out after 3 days, toss it out, clean up your system, and let the cycle continue to work its way from ammonia to nitrite to nitrate. When you look in your sump, this is what you want to see. You want to see smooth bubbles flowing into the refugium zone. You want the return zone to be nice and clear, nothing crappy on the surface. You definitely don't want to see what's happening over here. I haven't turned on the skimmer quite yet. I plugged the skimmer in, and it already began to pull out stuff very quickly. I know, time-lapse, magic of photography, but I'm talking about within an hour, that was already pulled out of the system, and the water looks nice and clear across the entire sump, and that stuff can be tossed out. With a sponge, I wiped down everything and made it look brand new again. The Ecotech Vectra return pump has been very impressive, dead silent, moves the water, I can control it with my cell phone, and it has provided beautiful flow inside the display tank. Daily water tests ensued. This is day 7. I went ahead and grabbed a box of dry base rock or former live rock that was in the garage and threw it in the tank too during the cycling process. I was measuring specifically for ammonia every day, and I was also keeping an eye on nitrite because I knew that would begin to rise. The skimmer was keeping the water nice and clear. The cycle continued. Ammonia is deep green, but the nitrite was getting a little darker each day. And soon the ammonia began to get lighter and the nitrite got darker. It's totally normal. And then I thought, let's start checking nitrate as well because that's how this thing works. And soon I was noticing that I had almost no ammonia left at all in the water, and the nitrite was also evaporating until it's completely gone in this picture. And then I compared my results to the reef to make sure I was reading the ammonia kit right. So looking at them side by side, the top one there is the frag system, the bottom one is my reef. So I knew that the ammonia was virtually completely gone. Nitrite was gone. Nitrate was tiny, around 5. It was ready for fish. Which worked out great because I had an order of fish coming in on an impulse buy. So that worked out beautifully. Now, one quick note about API test kits. I see people putting them down, but these are readily available at most fish stores, and there's no reason to not trust these for measuring your tank during the cycle. I've used them for years, and I know they're reliable, and I don't mistrust them at all. Yay! The tank is cycled and the fish are in the tank! Those red spot glass cardinal fish were the first fish added to the tank, and then later I added the 3 captive bred yellow tangs, 2 of which have been picked up and have gone to my buddy's tank who's setting up a 1,000-gallon reef. I'm going to do a follow-up video when I finish all my electrical and get all my equipment looking prettier. Then I'll do an explanation about how it all operates using the new NIO skimmer, how I'm using the Smart ATO Micro instead of a different system, how I'm using ice cap dosing pumps to add my different parts, the 3 parts to the tank, and how the frags are doing. It's been kind of a balancing act trying to get this sweet spot, which was easier way back when I used B-Ionic a long time ago. So I just gotta be really meticulous and get this on track. Here are some recent pictures I've been sharing online of my reef over the last couple of days. I post pictures to my Mila's Reef page on Facebook. That's my business page, so be sure you're liking that page because I share all kinds of cool videos and articles that I find on a daily basis there. Thank you for watching and subscribing and for commenting and for liking, and please don't stop because you're all awesome. And let me know if you want me to keep doing live shows. I'd really like to know your opinion.